Mrs. Parker, we're confused why your husband called to withdraw your application. He said his girlfriend would be perfect for the position instead. Stunned, I confronted Nathan that evening. He simply smirked and slid an envelope across our kitchen table. Sign these divorce papers, Rachel. Your career was always too ambitious for our marriage. If you've ever had that moment when your world shatters in an instant, you'll understand exactly what I'm about to share. This story of betrayal and resilience might just give you the strength you need for your own battles. Hit subscribe so you don't miss a single chapter of these real-life journeys from rock bottom to triumph. Now, let's dive into how a single phone call changed everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The world tilted beneath me as I gripped my cell phone, the recruiter's voice echoing in my ear. Mrs. Parker, I'm calling from Westfield Digital. There seems to be some confusion regarding your application for the creative director position. Your husband called yesterday to withdraw your candidacy. He explained that after discussing it with you, you both decided the role would be too demanding given your personal priorities. My coffee went cold on my desk as I stared at my phone. Certain I'd misheard. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Jessica Collins, Westfield Digital's head of talent acquisition, sounded genuinely confused. Your husband, Nathan Parker, called yesterday to decline the creative director position on your behalf. He also mentioned that Vanessa Reyes, who apparently works at his firm, would be a better fit. He asked us to consider her application instead. Vanessa. The name struck me like a physical blow. Nathan's junior associate who'd been texting him at odd hours. The woman he'd claimed was just a colleague when I questioned why her name had appeared on our dinner reservation a month ago. When exactly did my husband call you? I asked, proud that my voice didn't betray the earthquake happening inside me. Yesterday afternoon around 2:30. Yesterday afternoon, while I was visiting my mother in the hospital. While I thought Nathan was in court for a case, he was systematically destroying my chance at independence. Thank you for letting me know, Jessica. This is unexpected. After a few more excruciating minutes of conversation, I ended the call and sat motionless, watching dust particles float through the afternoon sunlight streaming into my home office. The office I'd set up after gradually stepping back from my full-time position to accommodate Nathan's increasingly demanding schedule and concerns about my work-life balance. My hands trembled as I grabbed my car keys. I needed to confront him now, not wait until his normal arrival time, not give him hours to construct more lies. 11 years. How had I missed the signs? The memories came rapid fire, gaining new sinister context with each turn of the steering wheel as I drove toward downtown. Our whirlwind romance after meeting at a charity auction for the Legal Aid Society, his persistent pursuit, lavish gestures, and the charming way he'd won over my friends and family. Then the subtle shifts after our wedding 5 years ago. His increasing comments about my demanding schedule at the advertising agency, his concern about my stress levels, his suggestions that I take a step back to focus on building our life together. I stopped at a red light and caught my reflection in the rearview mirror, pale with wide, disbelieving eyes. Gone was the confident creative director who had led award-winning campaigns for global brands. In her place sat a woman who had gradually surrendered control of her life, one seemingly thoughtful suggestion at a time. The light turned green. I accelerated, remembering the day 4 months ago when Nathan had surprised me by refinancing my car loan, effectively removing my name from the vehicle's ownership. His generous gesture now revealed itself as another invisible chain. 6 months ago, I'd started secretly applying for jobs, using my personal email on applications, scheduling interviews during times Nathan would be in court. The interview with Westfield Digital had felt like oxygen after months of drowning. I'd been careful, using my friend's address on the application, creating a new email account, yet somehow he knew. I turned onto Michigan Avenue, the gleaming buildings of downtown Chicago reflecting the afternoon sun. As I approached Nathan's law firm, memories of my former career flooded back. The creative team I'd built and mentored, the industry respect I'd commanded, the satisfaction of seeing my campaigns come to life, all gradually sacrificed for a marriage that now revealed itself as a calculated power play. Nathan had never directly told me to quit. Instead, he'd orchestrated a tapestry of small concerns. Wouldn't it be nice to have more time together? Isn't the commute draining your energy? Don't you deserve a break after working so hard for so long? Each question delivered with apparent love, each sacrifice framed as my choice. I pulled into the parking garage adjacent to the sleek glass tower housing Montgomery, Schwartz & Klein, where Nathan had made partner last year. His achievement that had somehow become the reason I needed to be more supportive by taking on more household responsibilities. I checked my appearance in the visor mirror, wiping away a smudge of mascara and straightening my shoulders. Whatever awaited me inside that building would fundamentally change my life. I needed to face it with whatever dignity I could muster. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt endless. My reflection in the polished metal doors showed a woman I barely recognized. Designer clothes Nathan had selected, hair styled the way he preferred. The delicate gold necklace he'd given me for our anniversary, a perfect symbol of what our marriage had become. Beautiful from the outside, constricting from within. The law firm's reception area was all marble and glass, projecting power and prestige. The receptionist, a young man with a crisp suit and practiced smile, looked up as I approached. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Parker. Mr. Parker is in a client meeting at the moment." "This can't wait," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "It's urgent." Something in my expression must have convinced him. He hesitated, then nodded and picked up his phone. "Mr. Parker, your wife is here. She says it's urgent." A pause. "Yes, sir." He placed the phone down. "He'll be out in a moment." I stood in the reception area, acutely aware of every second ticking by on the oversized wall clock. Partners and associates bustled past, some nodding in recognition from firm events where I'd played the role of supportive spouse. The double doors to the conference room swung open, and Nathan appeared, his expression shifting seamlessly from annoyed to concerned husband. The performance was flawless, and I wondered how many times I'd watched this transformation without recognizing it for what it was. "Rachel," he said, approaching with a concerned frown. "Is everything okay? Is it your mother?" I met his gaze steadily. "I got a call today from Westfield Digital." For a split second, his confident facade cracked. A flash of calculation crossed his features before reassembling into confused innocence. "Westfield Digital?" he echoed, guiding me toward a small side room for privacy. "Why would they be calling you?" The audacity of his lie rekindled the anger simmering beneath my shock. 5 years ago, I would never have tolerated such blatant deception. Back then, I was Rachel Winters, creative director at Meridian Advertising, the youngest department head in the agency's history. My campaigns for luxury automotive brands had won national awards, and industry publications quoted me as an expert on digital marketing trends. Then I met Nathan Parker at a charity auction where my agency had donated significant creative services. He'd approached me with a glass of champagne and a carefully crafted compliment about my recent tourism campaign. His knowledge of my work had impressed me. I'd later discover he'd researched me thoroughly before our chance meeting. "You know exactly why they called," I said quietly. "You declined a job offer meant for me." Nathan's expression shifted to gentle concern. "We talked about this, Rachel. Your stress levels, the anxiety episodes you were having." I stepped back when he reached for my hand. The anxiety episodes, another manipulation. I'd had exactly one panic attack after pulling consecutive all-nighters for a major product, launch. Nathan had witnessed it and subsequently referenced it constantly, gradually magnifying a single incident into a chronic condition that necessitated lifestyle changes. "I never applied there," he continued smoothly. "There must be some misunderstanding." 3 years ago, fresh from our honeymoon in Greece, I might have believed him. The Nathan I'd fallen for was supportive, ambitious but kind, a rising attorney, who admired my career and promised partnership in all things. "I interviewed with them 2 weeks ago," I said, my voice gaining strength, "while you were supposedly in deposition all day." His eyes narrowed slightly, the first authentic reaction I'd seen. "You've been interviewing behind my back? Just like you've been interfering with my career behind mine." 18 months after our wedding, the subtle changes began. His admiration for my work ethic transformed into concern about my hours. His interest in my campaigns became questions about whether they were worth the stress. When my agency offered me a promotion that would involve more client travel, Nathan orchestrated a weekend getaway where he convinced me we needed more time together, not less. "I was trying to protect you," he said, switching tactics. "You were happier after stepping back from that high-pressure environment. You said so yourself." Had I? Perhaps, but those words came after weeks of him subtly undermining my confidence, highlighting every minor workplace frustration while minimizing my accomplishments. His campaign was so gradual, I barely noticed it happening. 2 weeks after declining the promotion, my replacement was hired. 3 weeks later, a restructuring eliminated my position entirely. A coincidence I now questioned. Nathan had comforted me, suggesting this was an opportunity to reset. With his income sufficient for our lifestyle, why not take time to reassess my priorities? "My former colleagues called last month," I said, watching his reaction. "They're launching a new boutique agency and wanted me as a partner." His jaw tightened. "Those calls upset you. You were restless for days afterward." "I was restless because I realized how much I missed my work," I countered. "How much I missed being valued for my mind, not just for keeping our home perfect." The isolation had been so gradual. First, Nathan suggested we move to an upscale North Shore suburb. Beautiful, but a 45-minute drive from my closest friends. Then came his subtle criticisms. "Jen always seems to call during dinner. Your mentor at Meridian, doesn't she seem a bit competitive with you? Your brother, so negative about his marriage." One by one, my connections weakened. Holiday. Cards replaced weekly coffees. Texts replaced phone calls. Nathan filled the void with his friends, his colleagues, his preferences. "That's unfair," he said, expression hardening. "I've supported you taking time to find what truly makes you happy." "What makes me happy is what's always made me happy." My voice was steady now, fueled by the clarity that comes with recognizing a fundamental truth. Creating campaigns that resonate, leading teams, solving creative problems. You never supported that. You systematically dismantled it. 3 weeks ago, using the library computer, I'd applied to Westfield Digital's creative director position. Their rapid response suggested my reputation hadn't completely faded. The interview, conducted during Nathan's supposed client dinner, had felt like rediscovering a vital part of myself. "You're being dramatic," Nathan said dismissively. "I've done everything to make your life easier." "By controlling every aspect of it," I challenged. "By isolating me from my support network. By making financial decisions that leave me dependent on you." His expression changed, the mask slipping to reveal something cold and calculating. "You want to talk financial decisions? The joint account I established to simplify our lives? The investments I manage for our future? The mortgage I qualified for?" Each supposed benefit now revealed itself as a carefully laid trap. I no longer had independent accounts. My name wasn't on our house deed despite my contribution to the down payment, Another paperwork simplification Nathan had suggested during closing. I earned 6 figures for 7 years before meeting you, I said. Where did that money go, Nathan? To our life together, he replied smoothly. To building something meaningful. But I'd been rebuilding too, secretly. The Westfield position would have been my foundation, a salary comparable to my previous role, healthcare benefits, a 401k with matching contributions, financial independence, and Nathan had known exactly what that meant. How did you find out? About the offer? I asked. A flicker of something, pride, crossed his face before he controlled it. Does it matter? What matters is, we make decisions together, as a team, like your decision to recommend Vanessa for my position. At this, he finally stilled, calculation visible behind his eyes. The choreographed husband routine vanished entirely. Gone was the concerned spouse, the supportive partner. In his place stood a stranger with my husband's face, watching me with cool assessment. So that's what this is about, he said quietly. His voice changed completely. Nathan, that's exactly what this is about, I said, finding strength in finally confronting the truth. Jessica mentioned you recommended Vanessa for the position. Your associate Vanessa, the same Vanessa whose name appeared on our dinner reservation last month. Nathan's lips curled into a slight smirk, an expression so foreign on his face that I almost didn't recognize him. He straightened his posture and glanced at his watch, a casual gesture that somehow communicated I was now on his timetable, not the other way around. You weren't supposed to find out like this, he said, sounding more inconvenienced than apologetic. I had it all planned for this weekend. Planned what, exactly? Instead of answering, he walked to his briefcase on a nearby table, the expensive leather one I'd given him for Christmas, and retrieved a manila envelope. My stomach clenched as he placed it on the conference table between us. Vanessa and I have been seeing each other for 4 months, he said matter-of-factly, as if discussing a business transaction. She understands my ambitions in a way you never could. The casual cruelty of his words hit me like physical blows. 4 months, while I was preparing his favorite meals, while I was redecorating our home office to his specifications, while I was attending his firm functions and charming his colleagues. And the job at Westfield? I managed to ask. A convenient opportunity, he shrugged. Vanessa's been looking to move from legal to corporate marketing. Your background made? That position perfect for her. Once I explained to the hiring manager that you weren't interested, the calculated nature of his betrayal was breathtaking. He hadn't just cheated. He'd actively sabotaged my future to benefit his mistress. Why, not just divorce me? I asked, genuine confusion breaking through my anger. Something flickered in his eyes, a hint of the calculation that I now realized had always been there. Divorces are messy. I wanted to ensure certain arrangements were in place first. Gaze fell to the manila envelope. He nudged it toward me. Divorce papers, he confirmed. Already drafted. My lawyer assures me they're quite reasonable given the circumstances. What circumstances? Our prenuptial agreement specified fidelity. His tone was almost bored. Since you've been pursuing employment without my knowledge or consent, against our agreed arrangement, you've breached our contract. Section 4, paragraph 3. You can check if you'd like. The prenup. The document his family's lawyer had presented days before our wedding. The one Nathan had assured me was standard protection given his family's assets. The one I'd signed without, having my own attorney review it because I trusted him implicitly. You manipulated me into leaving my job, I said, the pieces clicking into horrifying place. You isolated me from my support system. You controlled our finances. And now you're trying to claim I violated our agreement by simply trying to work again? His smile was chilling in its confidence. Your signature is on every document, Rachel, including the postnuptial amendment stating that career decisions would be made jointly. The amendment, 6 months ago, presented as a simple update while we refinanced our mortgage. I'd signed it along with a dozen other documents, trusting him to explain anything important. "That can't be legal," I whispered. "Ask any attorney. I'll even pay for yours. It's in the settlement offer." He gestured to the envelope. $15,000 for legal fees. Very generous under the circumstances. I stared at the man before me, searching for any trace of the person I thought I'd married. There was nothing. No remorse, no conflict, not even the satisfaction of victory, just efficient execution of a plan. "Did you ever love me?" The question escaped before I could stop it. He seemed to consider this, tilting his head slightly. "You were an excellent choice at the time. Successful, well-connected, physically attractive. The perfect accessory for the life I was building." His gaze became appraising. "But Vanessa is younger, more flexible in her ambitions, more aligned with my long-term goals." Each word stripped away another layer of the fiction I'd been living in. This wasn't a relationship that had failed. It was a calculated deception from the very beginning. "How many others were there?" I asked, my mind racing through suspicious late nights and unexplained weekend conferences. "Does it matter?" He checked, his watch again. "I have a client waiting. I'd appreciate it if you could review the papers tonight." I didn't reach for the envelope. Instead, I looked around his office. The law degrees I'd had custom framed, the family photos I'd carefully arranged, the desk I'd helped select when he made partner. All part of an elaborate stage set for a performance of domestic bliss. "You never intended this to last?" I realized aloud. "Everyone is a stepping stone to someone, Rachel." He slid the envelope closer to me. "This offer expires in 48 hours. After that, things become considerably less generous." My hands trembled. As I finally picked up the envelope, inside was a thick document with yellow sticky tabs marking signature lines. Flipping through, I caught fragments of legalese: waives all rights, forfeits claim to, agrees not to pursue. A single paper-clipped check was attached to the final page. $125,000, the price Nathan had calculated for my dignity. At the back of the document was a summary page with 2 signature lines. The first, marked with an X, was for me. The second already bore Nathan's confident signature, the same one I'd watched him practice on our marriage license. "You've been planning this for weeks," I said, the timeline becoming clear. "The job offer was 2 weeks ago. You've known since then." "I've known we weren't compatible for much longer than that," he corrected. "The Westfield opportunity simply accelerated my timeline." He reached into his pocket and slid a pen across the table. It was the Mont Blanc I'd given him for his birthday, engraved with his initials and "Forever yours." "Sign the papers, Rachel. I need to get back to my client." Something cold and clarifying washed over me. The man before me had orchestrated my professional dismantling, my financial dependence, my social isolation, all while planning his seamless transition to a younger, more flexible replacement. He'd weaponized my trust, used my signature against me, and now expected me to quietly accept defeat. I reached for the pen, my fingers closing around the cool metal that once symbolized our future. Nathan's expression shifted toward satisfaction. "Where should I sign?" I asked quietly. "Just initial here." Nathan pointed to the first tab, "and sign on the last page." I held his Mont Blanc pen, feeling its weight in my hand. The pen that had once represented his love now symbolized his betrayal. But instead of signing, I slipped it into my pocket. "I think I'll need to review these documents more carefully," I said, gathering the papers. "Perhaps with my own attorney." A flash of irritation crossed his face. "The offer expires in 48 hours, Rachel." "Then I have approximately 47 hours and 55 minutes, I replied, surprised by my own composure. Before he could object, I turned and walked toward the door, the divorce papers clutched against my chest. His phone rang, probably Vanessa wondering why he was running late. I heard him answer as I walked out. Yes, slight delay. She's being difficult. No, nothing to worry about. His voice faded as the elevator doors closed behind me. Once inside, I leaned against the wall, my legs suddenly weak. The documents in my arms felt like they weighed 100 pounds. In the lobby, I nodded politely to the security guard and walked out into the late afternoon sunshine. The world looked strangely normal. People hurrying home from work, traffic, moving along Michigan Avenue, a street musician playing saxophone on the corner. How could everything appear so ordinary when my entire life had just imploded? I made it to my car before the tears came, great heaving sobs that bent me double over the steering wheel. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of gradually surrendering. My identity, my career, my independence, all for a man who had been planning my disposal from the beginning. For 20 minutes, I let myself fall apart completely. Then, with shaking hands, I reached for a tissue from the glove compartment and wiped my face. Crying wouldn't solve anything. I needed to think clearly. I started the car and pulled out of the parking garage, instinctively heading north toward our Winnetka home. Then, at the last moment, I turned east. I couldn't face that house right now. The perfect showcase home that Nathan had insisted upon, with its gourmet kitchen I rarely used, and the home office where I'd gradually watched my career wither. Instead, I drove to Lake Michigan, finding a quiet spot in a lakefront park. The vast expanse of water had always helped me think. I sat on a bench, opened the envelope, and began reading the divorce agreement in detail. What I found made my blood run cold. Nathan hadn't just prepared divorce papers, he'd crafted a complete erasure of my financial existence. The agreement stipulated that I would vacate our home within 30 days, surrender any claim to our joint investments, relinquish access to our shared accounts, and, most stunningly, agree to a non-disclosure agreement that would prevent me from discussing any aspect of our marriage or divorce with anyone, including potential employers. In exchange for signing away my past, present, and future, I would receive a one-time payment of $125,000, a sum that would last perhaps a year in Chicago, even with drastically reduced expenses. But the most disturbing clause appeared on page 17. I would agree not to seek employment with any company where Nathan's clients or associates had interests for a period of 5 years. Given his firm's extensive corporate client list, this would effectively bar me from working at most major advertising agencies and corporations in the Chicago area. It wasn't just a divorce. It was professional exile. The prenuptial agreement, attached as an appendix, contained the fidelity clause he'd mentioned, but it also included something he hadn't disclosed, a career concordance provision stating that neither spouse would make significant career changes without the other's consent. My secret job interview had technically violated this clause. What Nathan hadn't mentioned was that the same provision applied to him. His affair with Vanessa, an associate at his firm, could arguably constitute a career decision made without my consent, especially if she was being positioned for a promotion or transfer. As the sun began to set over the lake, casting long shadows across the water, I felt something shift inside me. The shock and grief were still there, but now they made room for something else: determination. Nathan Parker had spent years methodically dismantling my confidence, my career, and my connections. He had calculated every move with cold precision, anticipating my responses and steering me toward this moment of complete vulnerability. But he had made one critical miscalculation. He thought he had broken me completely. He expected the Rachel who walked out of his office to be the same dependent, isolated woman he had carefully crafted over 5 years of manipulation. He was wrong. As darkness fell over Lake Michigan, I made a decision. I wouldn't fight Nathan on his terms, in courtrooms with expensive lawyers paid from accounts he controlled. I would rebuild what he had taken from me, piece by piece, starting tonight. I took out my phone and made a call to the one person Nathan had never managed to completely separate me from. Sophia? It's Rachel. I need your help. Sophia Carson had been my roommate in college and my first creative partner when we both started as junior copywriters at a small agency. We'd gradually drifted apart after my marriage, another casualty of Nathan's subtle isolation campaign. But unlike others, Sophia had persisted, sending birthday cards, occasional texts, and invitations I usually declined at Nathan's suggestion. "I can stay with you for a few days?" I asked, my voice small in the darkness of my parked car. "A few days?" "Rachel, you can stay as long as you need," Sophia replied without hesitation. "What's going on?" "I'll explain everything when I get there. Is the address on Pine Street still good?" "Yes, same place. I'm working from home today, so come straight over." I ended the call and sat for a moment, considering my next steps. Going home to pack would risk running into Nathan if he returned early. Better to start fresh, without any possessions that could tie me to the life he had constructed. Before driving to Sophia's, I made 2 stops. First, the bank, where I withdrew the maximum daily limit of $1,000 from our joint checking account. It wouldn't sustain me for long, but it was a start. Next, a department store where I purchased basic necessities, a change of clothes, toiletries, a prepaid phone card. I couldn't risk Nathan tracking my primary phone. Sophia lived in a converted warehouse in Chicago's West Loop, an area that had transformed from industrial decay to artistic hub during the years of my marriage. Her loft was spacious but cluttered with the creative chaos of someone who lived their passion. Canvases leaned against walls, design books stacked on every surface, mood boards pinned above a long work table. She opened the door and immediately pulled me into a hug. "God, Rachel, you look terrible." The blunt assessment, so different from Nathan's careful manipulations, made me laugh through fresh tears. "Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear." Over cups of strong coffee at her kitchen island, I told her everything: the gradual dismantling of my career, the isolation from friends and family, the discovery of Nathan's betrayal, and the predatory divorce agreement. Sophia listened without interruption, her expression shifting from concern to outrage. When I finished, she didn't offer platitudes or pity. Instead, she stood up and retrieved a bottle of whiskey from a cabinet. "First we drink," she said, pouring 2 glasses. "Then we plan your resurrection." The whiskey burned going down, but it steadied me. "I don't even know where to start. He's taken everything." "Not everything," Sophia replied firmly. "He couldn't take your talent, your experience, or your reputation in the industry. Those are still yours." "Are they?" "I've been out of the game for almost 2 years. Positions like the one at Westfield don't come along every day. So, we start smaller. Freelance work to build your portfolio back up. I have clients who need good creative direction. The pay won't be what you're used to, but it's a start." Nathan's divorce agreement has a non-compete clause. I can't work for any company connected to his firm's clients for 5 years. Sophia's eyes narrowed. "That's ridiculously broad. It might not even be enforceable." "Maybe not, but fighting it would require money for lawyers that I don't have. Then we work around it." She pulled out her laptop. "Let's make a list of every major client his firm represents. Then we'll identify companies that aren't connected." For the next 2 hours, we compiled information, creating a map of the advertising landscape that wouldn't trigger Nathan's legal traps. The list of available options was short, but not non-existent. Smaller agencies, startups, companies headquartered outside Chicago, but with local offices, all potential pathways back to independence. Around midnight, exhausted but clearer-headed than I'd been in months, I collapsed on Sophia's sofa bed. "Thank you for this." "For what? Basic human decency?" She shook her head. "That husband of yours really did a number on your expectations." Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by nightmares where I was signing papers that multiplied endlessly before me. I woke at dawn, disoriented in the unfamiliar space, the events of the previous day crashing back like a physical weight. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Nathan and a series of texts that evolved from irritated, "Where are you?" to concerned, "Are you okay?" to threatening, "If you think disappearing will improve your settlement, you're mistaken." I turned off notifications and placed the phone on Sophia's kitchen counter. "Morning, warrior." Sophia emerged from her bedroom in paint-splattered sweats, her hair twisted into a messy bun. "First day of your new life. How do you want to spend it?" I considered the question. What I wanted was to curl into a ball and hide from the wreckage of my marriage. What I needed was to start rebuilding. "I need a lawyer," I said decisively. "Not just any lawyer, someone who specifically handles cases of financial control and manipulation in marriages." "I might know someone," Sophia said, pouring coffee. "My cousin went through a divorce last year. Her ex was financially abusive. Not to your husband's level, but similar tactics. Her attorney specialized in high conflict, divorces with power imbalances. Can you get me her contact information?" Already texting my cousin. While Sophia prepared breakfast, I created a new email account under a name Nathan wouldn't recognize. My first priority was securing the Westfield position that he'd tried to steal from me. I drafted an email to Jessica Collins, explaining in professional but direct terms what had happened, and expressing my continued interest in the creative director role. I hesitated before sending it. Did I really want to share such personal humiliation with a potential employer? But the alternative, allowing Nathan's sabotage to succeed, was worse. I hit send just as Sophia placed a plate of eggs and toast in front of me. "Eat," she commanded. "You'll need your strength." My phone pinged with a new text, this one from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, assuming it was Nathan using someone else's phone, but curiosity won out. "Just got confirmation from Westfield. Vanessa Reyes scheduled for final interview Tuesday 10 a.m. All looking good. We'll celebrate properly tonight. N." My blood ran cold. The text wasn't meant for me. Nathan had accidentally messaged me instead. Of someone else, perhaps another partner at the firm who knew about his affair. The interview was happening in 3 days. Vanessa was about to step into the role that should have been mine. "I need to act faster," I said, showing Sophia the text. She nodded grimly. "We need to get you in front of Westfield before Tuesday. But first, you need a bank account Nathan can't access." That morning became a blur of practical steps toward independence. With Sophia's help, I opened a new bank account at a credit union where Nathan had no connections. I transferred the cash I'd withdrawn, giving me a small financial foundation. I contacted my mother, briefly explaining the situation and asking her to secure any important documents still at her house from my pre-marriage life. My original birth certificate, my college diploma, awards I'd won in advertising competitions. By noon, I had a response from Jessica Collins at Westfield. Her email was professional but sympathetic. "Dear Rachel, thank you for your candid explanation. The situation you've described is concerning on multiple levels. While we have indeed scheduled an interview with Ms. Reyes, our interest in your candidacy remains. Would you be available for a meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m.? We can conduct this off-site if that would be more comfortable for you. Regards, Jessica Collins." A spark of hope ignited in my chest. I hadn't lost the opportunity yet. "They want to meet tomorrow," I told Sophia, who had been working at her desk while keeping me company through my administrative marathon. "That's fantastic," she spun in her chair. "But you'll need to look the part. No offense, but that department. Store outfit screams woman in crisis, not confident creative director." She was right. Appearance shouldn't matter, but in the advertising world, presentation was part of the package. I couldn't show up looking defeated. "I don't suppose you wear my size?" I asked weakly. Sophia laughed. "Not even close, but I know someone who might help." 3 hours later, I was sitting in the living room of Elena Vasquez, a stylist friend of Sophia's who worked with advertising executives and had a closet full of sample garments from photo shoots. Elena listened to an abbreviated version of my situation with professional detachment before disappearing into her massive closet. She emerged with a sleek navy pantsuit, a silk blouse in a soft cream color, and a pair of low heels. Try these. The suit is from a shoot that got canceled. It's never been worn outside this apartment. The outfit fit perfectly, transforming my external appearance into someone who looked in control of her life. Elena added minimal jewelry, small, gold earrings and a delicate bracelet, and suggested a simple hairstyle that would look polished but not overly styled. Now you look like someone who makes decisions, not someone who has decisions made for her, Elena declared, studying me in. The mirror. Looking at my reflection, I barely recognized myself. Not because the outfit was so different from what I would normally choose, but because the woman staring back at me had a determined set to her jaw that I hadn't seen in years. By evening, Sophia's contact had come through with the name of a divorce attorney who specialized in cases involving financial control. Margaret Wu had a 2-week waiting list for new clients, but agreed to a phone consultation the following morning after hearing the urgency of my situation. You've accomplished more in one day than most people in your situation manage in weeks, Sophia said as we shared takeout Thai food that night. You should be proud of yourself. I don't feel proud, I admitted. I feel stupid for not seeing what was happening sooner. For letting him isolate me from people like you who actually cared about me. That's how emotional manipulation works, Rachel. It's gradual. By the time you realize what's happening, you're already cut off from your support system. She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. But you're seeing clearly now, and you're fighting back. That night, I slept better than I had in months. My dreams no longer filled with endless paperwork, but with visions of reclaiming my life, piece by deliberate piece. The phone consultation with Margaret Wu began precisely at 8 a.m. Her voice was crisp and efficient, with none of the false sympathy I'd grown to dread from others. Ms. Parker, I've reviewed the notes you sent. You have a complicated situation, but not an unprecedented one. Before we discuss strategy, I need to know your priorities. What matters most to you in this divorce? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on surviving Nathan's ambush that I hadn't considered what I actually wanted. Financial independence, I said finally. I need to rebuild my career without his interference, and I want back what I contributed to our marriage, my portion of our savings, my share of the house equity. Not revenge? Margaret asked directly. The question made me pause. Did I want revenge? Part of me certainly did. I want justice, not revenge. I want him to face consequences for what he's done, but my main focus is rebuilding my life. Good. Revenge is expensive and rarely satisfying. Justice is achievable, especially with documentation. I could hear papers shuffling. Based on what you've shared, the prenuptial and postnuptial agreements may be vulnerable to challenge on several grounds: coercion, failure to disclose, and potentially fraudulent representation. But that would require going to court. Eventually, yes, but most cases like yours never reach a courtroom. When faced with solid counter-evidence and the prospect of public exposure, men like your husband typically reassess their position. Nathan's 48-hour deadline expires tomorrow, I reminded her. That deadline is meaningless. It's a pressure tactic designed to force your compliance while you're still in shock. Illinois has a 90-day minimum waiting period for divorces. You have time. Margaret outlined a preliminary strategy. Document everything. Gather evidence of financial contributions to the marriage. Identify witnesses who could testify to my professional reputation before Nathan's interference, and prepare a financial statement detailing assets I brought into the marriage. What about the non-compete clause in his proposed settlement? I asked. Overly broad and likely unenforceable, especially since you're not privy to any confidential information about his clients. But we'll need to address it explicitly in our counterproposal. By the end of our call, I had a plan and a list of immediate actions. Margaret would formally become my attorney of record the following week, but in the meantime, she provided specific guidance on documenting assets and protecting myself from further manipulation. One more thing, Ms. Parker. Change all your passwords. Immediately. Email, social media, banking, everything. Use a password manager and two-factor authentication where possible. Men like your husband often monitor their spouse's communications. The warning sent a chill through me. How many of my messages had Nathan seen over the years? How many times had he known my thoughts before I expressed them? After ending the call, I spent the morning following Margaret's instructions, systematically, changing passwords and setting up new security measures. I also documented everything I could remember about our financial history: my income before marriage, contributions to our joint accounts, major purchases I had funded. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Over 5 years, my substantial income had gradually disappeared into accounts and investments Nathan controlled. The house we'd purchased together, a $1.2 million property in Winnetka, had been paid for with a down payment that included $200,000 from my savings, yet my name had been removed from the deed during a refinancing process I barely remembered. He's been planning this for years, I told Sophia when she returned from a client meeting. Every financial move positioned him for this exact scenario. All the more reason to fight back, she replied, reviewing my notes. This isn't just emotional abuse. It's financial fraud. My meeting with Westfield Digital was scheduled for 2 p.m. at a coffee shop in the Loop, far from Nathan's office. I arrived 30 minutes early, choosing a table with a clear view of the door so I could see Jessica Collins before she saw me. She arrived promptly at 2 p.m., accompanied by a man I recognized from my previous interview, Thomas Rivera, Westfield's chief marketing officer. They spotted me immediately, and Jessica approached with a professional smile. "Rachel, thank you for meeting us. This is Tom Rivera." Tom shook my hand firmly. "We've met before, though under different circumstances." We settled at the table with our coffees, the initial pleasantries giving way to the real purpose of our meeting. "I want to be direct," Jessica began. "Your email raised serious concerns, both about your situation and about our hiring process. We pride ourselves on thorough vetting of candidates, yet somehow your husband was able to influence our decisions without authorization." "I appreciate your candor," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "To be clear, I remain very interested in the creative director position. What happened with my husband doesn't change my qualifications or my commitment." Tom leaned forward. "We're still interested as well. Your portfolio and interview were impressive, but we need to understand the full situation before proceeding." For the next 30 minutes, I provided a carefully edited version of events, factual, but not emotional, professional but honest. I explained how Nathan had systematically undermined my career, his deception regarding the job offer, and his attempt to position Vanessa for the role. "That explains some inconsistencies in Ms. Reyes's application," Jessica noted. "Her resume claimed experience leading creative teams, but her references couldn't confirm those details." "I'm not here to disparage Vanessa," I said carefully. "She may be qualified in other ways, but I want to be considered on my own merits, without my husband's interference." Tom and Jessica exchanged glances. "We'd like to proceed with your candidacy," Tom said finally. "But given the situation, we need to adjust our process." The final interview would normally involve meeting our executive team, including several individuals who have relationships with your husband's law firm. My heart sank. Another roadblock created by Nathan's far-reaching connections. "However," Tom continued, "we can arrange an alternative evaluation process, a project-based assessment where you develop a campaign concept for one of our clients. If your work impresses the client directly, the executive team's concerns about potential complications would be mitigated." It wasn't an ideal solution, but it was an opportunity. What's the timeline for this project? We'd need your concept by Monday morning. The client presentation would be Tuesday afternoon. Less than 4 days to develop a complete campaign concept, while simultaneously managing the unraveling of my marriage and rebuilding my life from scratch. Under normal circumstances, I would have requested more time. But these weren't normal circumstances, and I couldn't risk losing this opportunity. I'll do it, I agreed. Jessica slid a thumb drive across the table. This contains the brief and background materials. The client is Horizon Healthcare, a regional hospital network looking to position themselves against larger competitors. They need a comprehensive digital campaign that emphasizes their personal approach to patient care. Healthcare, not an industry I had extensive experience with, but the core principles of effective marketing remained the same across sectors. I could do this. One more thing, Tom added, his expression serious. We're putting Vanessa Reyes's interview on hold pending an internal review of our hiring protocols. Your husband's actions raised red flags about our process vulnerabilities. A small victory, but significant. Nathan's plan to install Vanessa in my rightful position had at least been delayed. When I returned to Sophia's apartment, I found her in animated conversation with a woman I didn't recognize. They both looked up as I entered. Rachel. Perfect. Timing. This is my sister, Diane. She's a forensic accountant. Diane Carson didn't look like my mental image of an accountant. With vibrant purple-streaked hair and multiple ear piercings, she seemed more artist than financial professional, but her handshake was firm, and her eyes sharp with intelligence. Sophia told me about your situation, Diane said without preamble. Financial manipulation is my specialty. I help divorce attorneys trace hidden assets and document economic abuse. Patterns. I can't afford to hire a forensic accountant, I admitted. Diane waved away my concern. Consider this professional courtesy. Sophia helped me through my own divorce nightmare 3 years ago. Besides, I love busting manipulative spouses. It's why I went into this field. For the next 2 hours, Diane walked me through a systematic approach to uncovering Nathan's financial maneuvers. She helped me create a timeline of account changes, property transfers, and investment decisions that painted a damning picture of gradual, deliberate financial isolation. The good news, Diane said, reviewing our findings, is that electronic transactions leave trails. Even if you can't access the accounts anymore, the documentation exists. With subpoena power, your attorney can obtain all of it. The bad news? Men, like your husband, often move money before filing for divorce. Transfers to family members, investments in hard-to-trace assets, offshore accounts. We need to move quickly to document everything before more disappears. Diane helped me draft detailed financial discovery requests for Margaret to include in our counterfiling. She also suggested obtaining credit reports to identify any accounts opened in my name without my knowledge. Another common tactic in financially abusive relationships. By evening, I had compiled more evidence of Nathan's systematic financial control than I'd thought possible. The documents revealed not just a husband who had misled his wife, but a calculated strategy of economic entrapment executed over years. This isn't just divorce material, Diane observed, reviewing our work. There could be ethical violations here that would interest the Illinois Bar Association. Attorneys are held to strict financial disclosure standards. The possibility of professional consequences for Nathan offered a grim satisfaction, but I pushed it aside. My focus needed to remain on rebuilding, not retribution. With Diane's help complete, I turned my attention to the Westfield project. Sophia cleared her work table, creating space for me to spread out materials and begin developing concepts. She even rescheduled her weekend client meetings to give me uninterrupted use of her workspace. You don't have to do all this, I told her, overwhelmed by her generosity. Yes, I do, she replied simply. Because someday, you'll do the same for someone else. That's how we break these cycles of abuse. by showing each other what actual support looks like. As I began reviewing the Horizon Healthcare materials, a text arrived from an unknown number. "Rachel, this is ridiculous. You've had your tantrum. Come home so we can discuss this like adults. The offer expires tomorrow. Don't throw away $125,000 out of pride. Nathan." I showed the message to Sophia, who snorted in disgust. "He still thinks you're going to cave," she said. "He has no idea who he's dealing with." And for the first time since this ordeal began, I truly believed she was right. Nathan had spent years crafting a dependent, isolated version of me that existed only in relation to him. But that carefully constructed facade was crumbling, revealing the woman who had always existed beneath. Stronger, more determined, and infinitely more capable than he had ever understood. Nathan's 48-hour deadline came and went. I spent it immersed in the Horizon Healthcare project, channeling my anger and determination into creating the most compelling campaign concept I could envision. Sophia provided occasional feedback, but mostly gave me space to work, understanding that this project represented far more than a potential job. It was my declaration of independence. By Sunday evening, I had developed a comprehensive digital campaign centered around the theme, "Healthcare that knows your name." The concept leveraged Horizon's smaller size as an advantage, highlighting the personalized care that larger hospital systems often sacrificed for efficiency. The campaign included social media strategy, content marketing plans, video concepts, and targeted digital ad placements. "This is excellent," Sophia said, reviewing my final presentation deck. "If they don't hire you after seeing this, they're idiots." I was making final adjustments when my phone rang with a call from Margaret Wu. "I've been officially retained as your attorney," she announced without preamble. "I've sent a letter to Nathan's lawyer rejecting the proposed settlement and requesting comprehensive financial disclosure. You should know that Nathan has already filed the divorce petition with the court." My stomach tightened. What does that mean for me? It means the legal process has officially begun. The good news is that I've filed a counter-petition addressing the financial manipulation and requesting temporary support while the case proceeds. The first hearing is scheduled for next Monday. So soon? This is just a preliminary hearing to establish temporary arrangements, finances, property access, that sort of thing. Nothing final is decided at this stage. Will I need to see him? Yes, but will request a bailiff presence given the circumstances, and you'll have me beside you the entire time. After ending the call, I stared at my phone, anxiety building, at the thought of facing Nathan in a courtroom. Sophia, sensing my distress, sat beside me on the couch. "One step at a time," she reminded me. "Tomorrow you nail the Westfield presentation. Next week, you show up to court with your brilliant attorney. Small victories add up." Monday morning arrived with a fresh wave of nervous energy. I dressed in Elena's borrowed suit, practiced my presentation one final time, and headed to the Westfield Digital offices for my 11 a.m. meeting. The glass and steel high-rise downtown housed several technology companies, including Westfield's expanding digital marketing division. Jessica met me in the lobby, her professional demeanor softened slightly by a genuine smile. "Rachel, good to see you. How are you holding up?" "Ready to focus on the future," I replied, matching her professional tone. She nodded approvingly. "The client team is set up in the main conference room. Tom will introduce you, then it's your show." The conference room contained 6 people: Tom Rivera, 3 Westfield account executives I hadn't met before, and 2 representatives from Horizon Healthcare, introduced as their Chief Marketing Officer and Director of Patient Experience. I connected my laptop to the projection system, took a deep breath, and began my presentation. The nervousness that had plagued me all morning faded as I slipped into the familiar rhythm of pitching creative concepts. This was my element, the professional space where I had once thrived, where my voice carried authority and my ideas commanded respect. For 30 minutes, I walked the group through my campaign strategy, explaining how each element would position Horizon against larger competitors by emphasizing their personalized approach to care. I highlighted specific digital touchpoints where the healthcare that knows your name concept would resonate most strongly with potential patients. When I finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then Horizon's CMO spoke up. This is exactly the direction we've been trying to articulate. You've captured the essence of what makes us different in a way that feels authentic, not gimmicky. Questions followed, detailed inquiries about implementation timelines, content creation processes, measurement metrics. I answered each with confidence, drawing on my years of experience leading similar campaigns. By the time the meeting concluded, the energy in the room was palpable. Tom walked me out, waiting until we reached the elevator bank before speaking. That was impressive, Rachel. The client is clearly enthusiastic. When might I expect to hear a decision? I kept my tone professional despite the hope building in my chest. We have one more candidate presenting tomorrow morning. I don't anticipate a long deliberation process after that. Vanessa Reyes? I couldn't help asking. Tom's expression tightened slightly. No. We've indefinitely postponed her consideration. This is another candidate from our original shortlist. As the elevator arrived, Tom held out his hand. Whatever the outcome, thank you for your professionalism throughout this unusual situation. I shook his hand firmly. Thank you for the opportunity to be judged on my work, not my personal circumstances. The rest of Monday passed in a blur of activity. Margaret sent over court documents that needed my immediate review. Diane Carson called with updates on her financial investigation, having uncovered evidence that Nathan had opened a separate investment account 3 years into our marriage, gradually transferring funds from our joint savings without my knowledge. By evening, I was mentally exhausted but strangely energized. For the first time in years, I was actively shaping my future rather than passively accepting the path Nathan laid out for me. My phone chimed with a text just after 8 p.m. Unknown number, but I immediately recognized Nathan's communication style. Rachel, this has gone far enough. I see you've hired Margaret Wu, an expensive choice that will drain what little money you have access to. Be reasonable. My offer still stands, but not indefinitely. Meet me tomorrow to discuss terms. The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, facing legal challenge and professional exposure, he still believed he could control the narrative. I showed the message to Sophia, who had become my sounding board for all things Nathan-related. He's getting nervous, she observed. Margaret, must be making him sweat. Should I respond? Only through your attorney. Any direct communication could be twisted or used against you. I forwarded the message to Margaret, who replied almost immediately, Standard intimidation tactic. Do not engage. I'll handle all. Communication going forward. Tuesday morning brought a surprise. I was reviewing financial documents Margaret had requested when an email arrived from Jessica Collins. Rachel, I'm pleased to inform you that Horizon Healthcare has selected your campaign concept for immediate development. This typically expedites our internal decision process. Are you available to meet with our executive team tomorrow at 10 a.m. to discuss the creative director position? Please confirm at your earliest convenience. Regards, Jessica. I stared at the screen, reading the message 3 times to ensure I hadn't misunderstood. Horizon had chosen my concept over a competitor who'd had more time to prepare, who wasn't working from a borrowed desk in a friend's apartment while navigating a divorce crisis. Sophia, I called out, my voice cracking with emotion. They chose my campaign. She rushed from her workspace, reading the email over my shoulder before enveloping me in a fierce hug. Of course they did. It was brilliant work. They want me to meet the executive team tomorrow. About the job. This is happening, Rachel, she said, gripping my shoulders. This is really happening. You're taking back your life. I responded to Jessica, confirming my availability and expressing my enthusiasm for the meeting. Within minutes, she replied with details of the executive team meeting and a request for my salary expectations and availability timeline. The salary question required careful consideration. I needed to balance my immediate financial needs against my long-term value. After discussing options with Sophia, I proposed a compensation package slightly above what I'd earned at my peak as creative director at Meridian, including performance bonuses tied to campaign success. Too high? I worried aloud after sending my response. Not at all, Sophia assured me. You're worth every penny. Besides, if they try to negotiate down, you have room to compromise while still securing what you need. That evening, we celebrated with takeout food and a bottle of wine. The preliminary hearing for my divorce was still days away, and countless challenges remained. But this victory, reclaiming my professional identity despite Nathan's sabotage, felt monumental. A toast, Sophia said, raising her glass. To Rachel Parker, creative director. Not yet, I cautioned. They haven't formally offered me the position. They will, she replied confidently. And when they do, I want to be there when you tell. Nathan? The mention of his name dampened my spirit slightly. I'm dreading seeing him in court. Of course you are. He's spent years conditioning you to seek his approval and fear his disapproval. That doesn't disappear overnight. She refilled my glass. But each day you make decisions without him. His power diminishes. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone lit up with a notification. An email from an address I didn't recognize, but the subject line made my blood run cold. Last chance before consequences. Sophia noticed my expression change. What is it? I opened the email, knowing already who it was from. Rachel, I've been more than patient. You've ignored my messages, hired an attorney known for scorched earth tactics, and apparently continue to pursue employment that violates our agreements. I had hoped to resolve this amicably, but your actions leave me no choice. Tomorrow, I will instruct my attorney to pursue all available remedies, including full enforcement of the prenuptial and postnuptial agreements, claims against your friend Sophia Carson for interfering in our marriage, communication with Westfield Digital regarding your contractual obligations. This can still be resolved privately. Meet me tomorrow at 9 a.m. at Lakefront Park to discuss terms. Come alone. Nathan. Claims against me? Sophia read over my shoulder, indignant. For what? Being a decent human being? It's an empty threat, I said, though my hands had begun to shake. He's trying to isolate me again by threatening the people helping me. And the timing isn't coincidental, Sophia pointed out. 9 a.m., right before your Westfield meeting. He's trying to sabotage you again. She was right. Nathan had somehow learned about my meeting with Westfield's executive team and was making a last-ditch effort to derail it. The same tactic he'd used throughout our marriage, creating crises that required immediate attention, pulling me away from professional opportunities at critical moments. I'm not going, I decided, forwarding the email to Margaret. I'm done. Playing by his rules. Margaret's response came within minutes. Good decision. This email constitutes harassment and demonstrates a pattern of interference with your employment prospects. Do not delete it. We'll address this in court on Monday. As I prepared for bed that night, a strange calm settled over me. Nathan's desperate. Tactics no longer inspired fear, only clarity about the man I had married and the life I was reclaiming. Part 7. The action. Planny awoke early Wednesday morning, my mind already racing with preparations for the Westfield meeting. Sunshine streamed through Sophia's guest room window, casting golden light across the temporary living space that had become my sanctuary. In just 5 days, I had begun dismantling the prison Nathan had spent years constructing around me. My phone chimed with a text from Elena, Outfit for executive conquest ready whenever you are. Good luck today, warrior. The fashion stylist had insisted on lending me another ensemble for today's meeting. A charcoal gray dress with a structured blazer that she promised would project both creativity and authority. When you land this job, you can start building your own power wardrobe again, she told me. When, not if. The confidence of my newfound support system continued to amaze me. After showering, I checked my email to find 2 important messages. The first was from Margaret, informing me that she had filed for an emergency restraining order based on Nathan's escalating harassment. "No need to appear in court for this," she wrote. "I'll handle it and update you afterward." The second email was from Jessica at Westfield, confirming our 10 a.m. meeting and adding that the executive team was particularly interested in discussing implementation of the Horizon campaign. As I dressed in Elena's carefully selected outfit, Sophia appeared in the doorway with coffee. "Big day," she said, handing me a steaming mug. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous," I admitted, "but ready." I cleared my morning schedule. "I can drive. You to Westfield if you want." The offer touched me deeply. "Thanks, but I need to do this on my own." She nodded, understanding. "Then I'll be here when you get back, with champagne, either for celebration or consolation." At 9:30 a.m., I arrived at Westfield Digital's offices. The receptionist, recognizing me from Monday, greeted me with a smile. "Ms. Collins asked me to take you directly to the executive conference room when you arrived." The executive conference room occupied the building's corner, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Chicago. Around a massive glass table sat 7 people, including Tom and Jessica, whom I recognized from previous meetings. The others were introduced as Westfield's CEO, CTO, COO, and 2 senior vice presidents. Jessica began the meeting with a summary of my background and the Horizon Healthcare project, emphasizing the client's enthusiastic response to my campaign. Concept. Tom followed with a detailed assessment of my qualifications and how they aligned with Westfield's strategic direction. Throughout their presentations, I maintained composed eye contact with each executive, projecting the confidence that had once been second nature to me. Inside, however, I wondered if they could see through my carefully constructed facade to the woman whose life was in complete upheaval. When it was my turn to speak, I focused on my vision for Westfield's creative direction, drawing on research I'd done about their current client portfolio and market positioning. I outlined how my approach would elevate their campaigns while maintaining the technical excellence they were known for. "I understand you're in a period of transition personally," the CEO said during the question period, addressing the elephant in the room with unexpected directness. "How would that impact your ability to lead our creative team effectively?" The question could have been devastating, reducing me to my circumstances rather than my capabilities. Instead, I saw it as an opportunity for honesty. "My personal situation has reminded me of something essential about creativity," I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "The best creative work emerges from clarity about who you are, what you value, and what you're trying to achieve. I have more clarity now than I've had in years, and that will benefit every campaign I touch." A slight smile appeared on his face. "Well said." The meeting continued for another 40 minutes, with detailed questions about management style, creative, processes, and client relations. When it concluded, the CEO stood and extended his hand. "This has been illuminating, Ms. Parker. We have one more candidate to meet this afternoon, but I'm impressed with your vision and resilience. Jessica will be in touch very soon." As Jessica walked me to the elevator, she lowered her voice. "Between us, that went exceptionally well. The CEO rarely stays for the entire interview." Hope bloomed in my chest, but I kept my response measured. "Thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to hearing from you." Outside, Chicago's spring sunshine felt like a physical embrace. Instead of taking a rideshare back to Sophia's apartment, I decided to walk a few blocks, allowing the positive energy from the meeting to settle into my bones. I was waiting at a crosswalk when a familiar silver BMW pulled up to the curb beside me. My heart stuttered as the passenger window lowered to reveal Nathan's face. "Get in, Rachel. We need to talk." I glanced around, suddenly aware of how exposed I was on the public sidewalk. "No, Nathan. Any communication should go through our attorneys." His expression hardened. "I know you just met with Westfield's executive team. Did you disclose that you're contractually barred from accepting their position?" "I'm not barred from anything. That clause won't hold up in court, and you know it." He leaned further toward the passenger window. "You think you've got it all figured out, don't you? Margaret Wu, financial investigations, restraining orders. You've been busy, but you're making a critical mistake." "The only mistake I made was not seeing you clearly years ago." A flash of genuine anger crossed his face, not the calculated display of emotion I'd grown accustomed to, but something raw and real. "I built you up from nothing, Rachel. When I met you, you were just another creative with modest talent and outsized ambition. Everything you achieved was because of my connections, my guidance, my support." The words were designed to wound, to reinforce the narrative of dependence he'd constructed. 6 days ago, they might have landed with devastating impact. Today, they merely revealed his desperation. "Is that what you tell yourself?" I asked quietly. "That I was nothing without you? It must be terrifying to realize that was never true." The light changed, and pedestrians began crossing in front of his car. A taxi behind him honked impatiently. "This isn't over," Nathan warned, his voice low. "I'll see you in court." As his car pulled away, I realized my hands were shaking, but not from fear. Adrenaline coursed through me, the body's natural response to confrontation. I had faced Nathan outside the carefully controlled environment he preferred and held my ground. Another small victory in the campaign to reclaim my life. When I returned to Sophia's apartment, I found not only Sophia waiting, but also Elena, Diane, and a woman I didn't recognize. "Surprise strategy session," Sophia explained, ushering me inside. "This is Carla Jensen, Margaret's paralegal. She's here to help prepare you for Monday's hearing." The next few hours were a crash course in courtroom procedures, financial documentation, and strategic presentation. Carla was methodical, walking me through what to expect at the preliminary hearing and how to respond to potential questioning from Nathan's attorney. "The judge will likely establish temporary financial arrangements," Carla explained. "You need to be prepared with clear statements about your immediate needs and access to marital assets." Diane had prepared comprehensive documentation of our financial entanglement, a paper trail demonstrating how Nathan had gradually consolidated control over our resources while creating the illusion of joint management. "We've identified 3 key accounts that should be immediately unfrozen," Diane said, highlighting sections of her report. "The joint savings account established before your marriage, the investment portfolio funded primarily from your Meridian bonuses, and the house equity account containing your down payment contribution." Elena's contribution was more practical but equally valuable, a detailed inventory of my personal belongings still at Nathan's house, categorized by financial and sentimental value. "This gives Margaret leverage to demand immediate access for retrieval," she explained. As the afternoon progressed, I felt a growing sense of preparedness. These women, most of whom had been strangers a week ago, had rallied around me with their professional expertise and personal support. They weren't just helping me survive Nathan's attack, they were helping me build a strategic counteroffensive. "There's something else we need to discuss," Carla said as our session wound down. "Nathan's attorney filed a new motion this morning, requesting an emergency hearing regarding alleged breach of confidentiality provisions." My stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" "He's claiming that by discussing your situation with Westfield, you violated confidentiality clauses in your prenuptial agreement. He's seeking an emergency injunction to prevent you from accepting any employment offer from them. Can he do that? Sophia asked, outraged. He can try, Carla replied. Margaret's already drafting our response. The emergency hearing is scheduled for Friday morning. Another roadblock, strategically timed to interfere with my potential job offer. Nathan was using the legal system the way he'd used everything else in our marriage, as a tool for control. So, even if Westfield offers me the position, I can't accept until this is resolved? The prospect of another delay was devastating. You can accept conditionally, Carla advised. Just be transparent with Westfield about the temporary legal hurdle. Margaret is confident the injunction will be denied, but it might take a few days. My phone rang. Jessica Collins from Westfield. I excused myself to take the call in Sophia's bedroom, my heart pounding. Rachel, I'm calling with excellent news, Jessica began without preamble. The executive team was unanimously impressed with your presentation and credentials. We'd like to formally offer you the creative director position, effective as soon as you're available to start. The words I'd been hoping to hear finally made real. Thank you, Jessica. I'm absolutely interested. Wonderful. I'll send over the official offer letter this afternoon. We're eager to have you join the team, particularly with the Horizon campaign ready for implementation. I took a deep breath. There's something I need to disclose. My divorce proceedings have taken a complicated turn. My husband's attorney has filed for an emergency hearing regarding my employment status. It's scheduled for Friday. A brief silence followed. I see. How might this affect your ability to accept our offer? It shouldn't affect it at all, I assured her. My attorney is confident the motion will be denied, but there might be a slight delay in my official start date. Rachel, I appreciate your transparency. This doesn't change our offer, but I'll need to inform the executive team of the potential delay. Her voice softened slightly. Is there anything we can do to support you through this process? The question caught me off guard. Support from an employer was a concept so foreign after years of Nathan's undermining that I wasn't sure how to respond. Actually, yes, I said, an idea forming. If Westfield could provide a formal statement confirming that I was the original candidate for this position and detailing the unusual circumstances of my husband's interference, it would strengthen my case significantly. I'll speak with our legal team immediately, Jessica promised. We take attempted manipulation of our hiring process very seriously. When I returned to the living room and shared the news of Westfield's offer, the reaction was immediate and joyous. Sophia uncorked the champagne she'd promised, and Elena insisted on a proper toast to this significant milestone. To Rachel, Diane said, raising her glass, who reminded all of us that it's never too late to reclaim your power. As we celebrated, I felt a profound shift in my perspective. The Rachel who had entered Nathan's office less than a week ago had been seeking answers. The Rachel who now stood surrounded by a newly formed circle of support was creating them. Friday morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. at the downtown courthouse, and Margaret had instructed me to dress conservatively and speak only when directly addressed by the judge. Remember, she said during our final preparation call the night before, this hearing is specifically about Nathan's attempt to block your employment. We don't need to address the broader divorce issues today. Stay focused, stay calm, and let me handle the legal arguments. Sophia insisted on accompanying me to the courthouse, though she would wait outside the courtroom. Moral support, she explained, handing me a travel mug of coffee as we left her apartment. Besides, I want to see Nathan's face when you walk out victorious. The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that cast everyone in an unflattering pallor. Nathan and his attorney, a silver-haired man with an expensive suit and perpetual frown, were already seated at one of the tables when Margaret and I entered. Nathan's eyes locked on mine, his expression a calculated mixture of concern and disappointment. The Same look he'd perfected whenever I'd challenged his decisions during our marriage. I held his gaze for a moment before deliberately turning away, denying him the reaction he sought. "All rise," the bailiff announced as Judge Eleanor Reeves entered the courtroom. She was a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "We're here on the matter of Parker versus Parker, emergency motion regarding employment restrictions," she began, reviewing the documents before her. "I've read the filings from both parties. Mr. Donovan, as the moving party, you may begin." Nathan's attorney stood, straightening his tie. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward matter of contract enforcement. Mrs. Parker signed both prenuptial and postnuptial agreements that clearly prohibit her from seeking employment with companies connected to Mr. Parker's law firm without his express consent. Westfield Digital represents a direct conflict of interest, as they work closely with several of Mr. Parker's major clients." Judge Reeves glanced at me over her reading glasses before returning her attention to the attorney. "And your client's concern is professional conflict of interest?" "Precisely, Your Honor. The potential for improper information sharing is substantial. Mrs. Parker was previously employed as a creative director at Meridian Advertising, correct?" the judge asked, reviewing her notes. "Yes, Your Honor." "And during that time, was there any allegation of improper information sharing regarding Mr. Parker's clients?" The attorney hesitated. "No, Your Honor, but—" "Ms. Wu, your response?" Judge Reeves turned to Margaret. Margaret rose with controlled precision. "Your Honor, this emergency motion is not about protecting client confidentiality. It's about control and sabotage. We have evidence that Mr. Parker actively interfered with Mrs. Parker's employment opportunity at Westfield Digital, going so far as to impersonate her to withdraw her application and recommend his girlfriend for the position instead." Nathan shifted uncomfortably in his seat as Margaret continued, presenting Jessica Collins's sworn statement detailing Nathan's interference in Westfield's hiring process. "Furthermore," Margaret added, "the non-compete provision in question was added through a post-nuptial amendment that Mrs. Parker signed without independent legal counsel, amid documented patterns of financial control and isolation. We contend this provision is unconscionable and unenforceable." For the next 40 minutes, the attorneys argued legal technicalities while I sat quietly beside Margaret, my back straight, my expression neutral despite the storm of emotions within me. Nathan occasionally whispered to his attorney, his frustration increasingly evident as the hearing progressed. Finally, Judge Reeves held up her hand. "I've heard enough. This court is not in the business of preventing qualified professionals from gainful employment, especially when the alleged conflict of interest is speculative at best." She looked directly at Nathan. "Mr. Parker, your emergency motion for injunctive relief is denied." Relief flooded through me, but I maintained my composed facade as the judge continued. "Furthermore, I find the timing and nature of this motion troubling, particularly in light of the documented interference with Mrs. Parker's employment prospects. The court will take this behavior into consideration during subsequent proceedings." She made a notation in her file. "Ms. Wu, your counter-motion for temporary financial relief is granted. Mr. Parker is ordered to provide Mrs. Parker with immediate access to the joint savings account and to pay temporary support of $5,000 per month until the divorce is finalized." Nathan's face flushed with anger, his mask of control finally slipping. He leaned toward his attorney, whispering urgently, but the older man simply shook his head. "Court is adjourned until the scheduled hearing on Monday, where we will address the remaining temporary arrangements," Judge Reeves concluded, rising from the bench. As the judge exited, Nathan stood and approached our table, his attorney unsuccessfully trying to restrain him. "This isn't over, Rachel," he said, his voice low but intense. "You've turned this into a public spectacle. My firm won't forget that." Margaret stepped between us. "Mr. Parker, all communication needs to go through counsel. Please step back." "You've made a serious miscalculation," he continued, ignoring Margaret. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming." I believe I do, I replied calmly, meeting his gaze without flinching. You'll use every legal maneuver to drag this out, hoping to drain my resources and break my resolve. You'll threaten and intimidate and manipulate, because that's what you've always done. But here's what you don't understand, Nathan. I'm not afraid of you anymore. His eyes widened slightly, a flicker of genuine surprise that confirmed what I already knew. Nathan's power had always depended on my fear, my insecurity, my isolation. In confronting him directly, without emotion or retreat, I had fundamentally changed the dynamic between us. Before he could respond, his attorney firmly gripped his arm. Nathan, not here. We need to regroup and consider our options. With a final glare in my direction, Nathan allowed himself to be led away. I watched him go, realizing that for the first time in our relationship, he was the one retreating. Outside the courtroom, Sophia was waiting with barely contained excitement. Well, what happened? Motion denied. I can accept the Westfield position, I told her, a smile finally breaking through my professional composure. And the judge ordered temporary financial support. Ha! Sophia exclaimed loudly enough to draw glances from passing attorneys. That's what I called justice. Margaret joined us, her usual efficiency softened by satisfaction. It's a good start. Monday's hearing will establish more comprehensive temporary arrangements, but today's ruling gives us significant leverage. As we walked toward the courthouse exit, I pulled out my phone to call Jessica with the news. Before I could dial, a text message appeared from an unknown number. This is Vanessa Reyes. We need to talk. It's important. Coffee in an hour? I showed the message to Margaret and Sophia, my guard immediately rising. Could be a trap, Sophia suggested. Nathan using her to get information. Or, Margaret said thoughtfully, she might have information. That could help us. Professional associates often turn on each other when legal consequences loom. After discussing the possibilities, we decided I would meet Vanessa, but in a public place with Sophia seated nearby, monitoring the conversation. The coffee shop Vanessa suggested was a small establishment near Nathan's office, busy enough to ensure privacy through ambient noise but public enough to discourage confrontation. I arrived first, selecting a table with clear visibility of the entrance and texting Sophia to take position at a corner table. Vanessa arrived precisely on time. She was younger than me, perhaps early 30s, with an immaculate appearance. That reminded me uncomfortably of how Nathan preferred me to look. Her expression was tense, her movements jittery as she approached my table. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding into the chair across from mine. "You said it was important," I replied neutrally. She glanced around before leaning forward. "Nathan doesn't know I'm here. If he found out—" She trailed off, then squared her shoulders. "I'm ending things with him. I thought you should know." "Why? Tell me." "We're getting divorced regardless of your relationship status." The weekend passed in a whirlwind of activity. Diane confirmed that the documents on Vanessa's flash drive were genuine, revealing a pattern of systematic financial concealment that extended back to the early days of our marriage. Margaret integrated the new evidence into our court strategy while I finalized details of my employment agreement with Westfield. By Monday morning, when we returned to court for the scheduled hearing on temporary arrangements, our position had strengthened considerably. Nathan appeared visibly shocked when Margaret presented documentation of his hidden assets, his confident demeanor crumbling as Judge Reeves ordered comprehensive financial disclosure and temporary control of several investment accounts to be transferred to me. "The court takes a dim view of hidden assets, Mr. Parker," Judge Reeves admonished. "This behavior will be considered when determining final distribution." Outside the courtroom, Nathan attempted one final intimidation tactic, approaching me as, "I spoke with Margaret about next steps." "You think you've won?" he said, his voice tight with controlled rage. "But this ends with me. It always has." I looked at the man I had once loved, seeing clearly now the insecurity beneath his confident exterior. the fragility behind his displays of strength. In that moment, I felt something unexpected, not hatred or anger, but pity. "This isn't about winning, Nathan," I replied quietly. "It's about surviving what you tried to do to me and building something better from the ruins." His expression flickered with something I couldn't quite identify, perhaps the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him in years. Without another word, he turned and walked away. 2 weeks later, I officially began my position as creative director at Westfield Digital. My first day was marked by a welcome breakfast with the creative team I would be leading, many of whom expressed enthusiasm about the direction I'd outlined for the Horizon Healthcare campaign. Jessica Collins gave me a tour of my new office, a tidy, bright corner space with windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. "The team is excited to have your leadership," she told me, "especially knowing how hard you fought to be here." That evening, I hosted a small dinner at my new apartment, a modest but modern one-bedroom I'd found in Lincoln Park within my new salary range. Sophia, Elena, Diane, and Margaret gathered around my dining table, raising glasses to celebrate not just my new position, but my reclaimed independence. "When I met Nathan 5 years ago, I was at the height of my career," I told them as we finished dinner. "I had everything: professional success, financial security, creative fulfillment. I thought I was gaining a partner who valued those things about me. Instead, I found someone determined to dismantle them piece by piece." "But he failed," Sophia reminded me, refilling our glasses. "Because of all of you," I acknowledged. "I couldn't have fought back without your support." "No," Margaret corrected firmly. "We provided tools and expertise, but you did the fighting. Never forget that." 6 months later, my divorce was finalized. The settlement, while not everything Margaret had initially sought, restored my financial foundation and acknowledged my contributions to our marital assets. Nathan's attempts to enforce the punitive prenuptial provisions had failed in the face of evidence showing manipulation and hidden assets. I occasionally heard updates about him through industry channels. He hadn't received the Melbourne position. After all, the financial irregularities uncovered during our divorce had triggered an ethics review at his firm. He remained in Chicago, his reputation diminished, but his career intact. Vanessa had indeed moved to Los Angeles, occasionally sending me brief updates about her new position. Our relationship wasn't friendship exactly, but there was a mutual respect born from shared experience. As for me, the Horizon Healthcare campaign launched to industry acclaim, establishing my creative vision at Westfield and validating their decision to hire me despite the complicated circumstances. I built a team that reflected my values: collaborative, innovative, supportive, and found my professional confidence returning stronger than before. 1 year to the day after Nathan had smirked across his desk and slid divorce papers toward me, I stood on the stage at the Chicago Advertising Awards, accepting recognition for the campaign he had tried to prevent me from creating. Looking out at the audience of industry professionals, I saw Sophia cheering wildly from our agency table. Beside her sat members of my creative team, whose talent and dedication had brought my vision to life. In the back of the room stood Jessica Collins, who had taken a chance on a woman in crisis and never doubted her decision. "Thank you for this recognition," I said into the microphone. "A year ago, I wasn't sure I would ever work in this industry again. Today, I'm leading campaigns that matter, surrounded by people who value authentic collaboration." I paused, choosing my next words carefully. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that our greatest professional asset isn't our portfolio or our client list. It's our voice. Never let anyone convince you to silence yours. As applause filled the room, I felt a profound sense of completion. The journey from that devastating phone call to this moment of triumph hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been setbacks, moments of doubt, and challenges I never anticipated. But standing on that stage, award in hand and future bright before me, I knew with absolute certainty that I had reclaimed something far more valuable than a job title or financial settlement. I had reclaimed myself, my voice, my creativity, my independence. Nathan had intended my story to end with defeat and erasure. Instead, it had become one of resilience and rebirth, a transformation more powerful and complete than he could have ever imagined. If you're watching this and seeing parallels to your own life, remember, the person who tries to diminish you fears your power. The one who isolates you fears your support system. The one who controls you fears your independence. Most importantly, the one who tells you that you're nothing without them fears who you truly are when you finally break free. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.